You have been carrying a quiet weight that does not always show on your face, and this message meets you where that weight has been sitting. It is the kind of weight that makes ordinary sounds feel louder, makes the room feel smaller, and makes your thoughts circle the same door one more time. You may have told yourself that you are simply tired, yet your spirit has been noticing something deeper than fatigue. There is a difference between being worn down by the day and being trained by God in the dark. Tonight, you are being addressed as one who has been seen before you were able to explain yourself. The words you are about to hear are not here to flatter you, but to steady you. They are for the part of you that has kept listening even when nothing around you looked like answer. They are for the part of you that has not let go, even while everything in you has been tempted to loosen. And they are for the part of you that wonders whether the week can still change before it closes. Stay with me, because the first sign of mercy is often quieter than people expect. It enters like a lamp in a hallway, not a thunderclap in the sky. It enters while the house is still, and your breathing is the only thing moving. It enters while God is already working in the places you cannot inspect. What feels delayed is not always denied. What feels hidden is not always absent. Sometimes heaven is closest when your evidence is smallest. You know the feeling of standing in your own kitchen late at night, with a cup cooling on the counter and the phone face down beside it, while your mind keeps returning to what has not happened yet. The cabinet door is half open, the light above the sink is too bright, and even the ordinary things seem to hold more silence than usual. Your shoulders lower a little when nobody is asking anything from you, but your chest still carries the question you have not said aloud. You have learned how to smile through the day, how to answer messages, how to keep moving, yet the moment the house goes still, the ache speaks again. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. That ache is not proof that you are failing. It is often the place where God is showing you how little of your strength was built on your own hands. When the apostle wrote about waiting, he was not speaking to people who already felt strong. He was speaking to people who had to trust while their faces were still wet with uncertainty. You are not strange for feeling the pull of that waiting. You are human under pressure, and God does not misread pressure as unbelief. The enemy wants you to call this emptiness, but heaven may be calling it preparation. The old habit would be to fill the silence with distraction, with another video, another conversation, another reason not to hear yourself. Yet this is the kind of silence where discernment grows roots. If you sit in it long enough, you begin to hear which thoughts are yours and which ones were simply dropped into the room. That matters, because not every loud thought deserves a throne. Some of them only deserve to be noticed and released. Tonight, God is not asking you to perform. He is asking you to remain long enough for clarity to arrive, and clarity often comes wearing the clothes of stillness. There is also the scene of the car parked outside after a long day. when the engine is off and the windshield reflects a sky that has already gone dark. Your hands rest on the wheel, not because you are driving anywhere, but because the body often stays braced after the mind has already given up. The seatbelt presses across your chest, and the whole world seems to have narrowed to the glow of the dashboard and the pulse in your wrist. In that moment, you know exactly how heavy an unspoken burden can feel. You know how a plan can look simple on paper and yet feel impossible in the body. You know how quickly the old interpretation returns, whispering that nothing is changing because nothing looks dramatic enough yet. But God does some of his deepest work in quiet, parked places, where you cannot force movement and cannot pretend to be in control. That is where surrender becomes honest. That is where the chest that was tightened by fear begins to soften, not because the road is solved, but because you stop confusing your grip with his governance. There is a contrast here that matters. You were taught to believe that motion always means progress, yet sometimes stillness is the very proof that you have arrived at a sacred pause. The pause is not punishment. It is a threshold, and thresholds always feel strange before they feel kind. The voice of worry wants you to leave early, to start the car too soon, to move before the instruction is clear. God does not ask for panic. He asks for trust that can sit in the parked car without turning the moment into defeat. This is where many chosen people learn to breathe again. This is where the body catches up with the promise. This is where the next step becomes possible because you finally stop demanding the whole map. You may have noticed how certain mornings feel ordinary from the outside and yet carry a strange pressure inside them, as if the air itself knows more than you do. The bed is made, the floor is cool, the curtains move a little with the first light, and still your mind reaches for something solid to hold. That is because the soul does not live by visible facts alone. It also lives by meaning, and meaning is often what begins to form before the change can be named. You have spent enough time in the valley to recognize the difference between a dead end and a hidden gate. One shuts down your spirit. The other asks you to wait while it opens from the other side. If you have been reading your life as a failure, God may be inviting you to read it again as formation. If you have been calling the delay rejection, heaven may be showing you that delay can be a guarding hand. There is tension in that reinterpretation because it costs the old story its authority. The old story says that if you were truly chosen, the road would already be easy. The new story says that being chosen often means the road is refined, not removed. This is not a guarantee that every obstacle will disappear. It is a revelation that obstacles do not get the final word. One moment you were measuring yourself by what had not opened. The next, you begin to understand that God can be at work precisely where your disappointment became loudest. That is a difficult sentence for fear to swallow, and it should be. Fear survives on false interpretation, discernment survives on truth, and truth begins to restore proportion to what has felt oversized in your mind. The burden is real, but it is not ultimate. The ache is real, but it is not eternal. Something is being prepared that does not need your panic to complete it. There are nights when you sit in a hallway or on the edge of your bed with your phone in your hand, and you can feel how close you are to scrolling yourself numb. The screen glows blue against your fingers, and the body looks for relief in the smallest possible motion. Yet even there, the stillness keeps returning, like a faithful witness refusing to be ignored. That is because God often meets you in the exact place where escape would be easiest, not to shame you, but to recenter you. The silence you have been resisting may be the very place where he is teaching you how to hear. You do not need to force an answer tonight. You need to let the question become holy. That is a different posture, and it changes the tone of the whole room. When you receive that, the same hallway becomes a place of arrival instead of postponement. The same bed becomes a place of surrender instead of rumination. The same phone becomes less important than the pulse of your own breathing. And in that breathing, something begins to settle. You are not being forgotten in the dark. You are being trained inside it. This is why pressure can be a tutor when God is the one holding the lesson. It strips away the false certainty that came from appearances. It leaves you with the older certainty, the one that is quieter but stronger. The one that says the unseen hand is still working. The one that says your life is not stuck just because your senses have not caught up yet. What matters now is not whether you can predict the timing. What matters is whether you can keep your heart open while timing belongs to God. Open hearts survive what closed fists cannot. You have learned by now that some forms of waiting feel like standing at a window after rain, watching water slide down the glass in thin, uneven lines. You can see movement, but you cannot control where it falls. You can see light, but you cannot make the clouds leave sooner. That is what your spirit has been living through, and the lesson has been more intimate than the lesson looked. It has touched your sleep, your appetite, your concentration, and the way you answer people when they ask how you are. It has touched the quiet part of you that is tired of being strong for everyone else. It has touched the place where you wonder whether God is listening to the same repeated prayer. He is. The repetition does not bore him. The repetition is often where your trust becomes visible. Still, the opposing voice says that if something mattered, it would have already changed. That voice is loud, but it is not wise. It confuses speed with faithfulness. It confuses delay with denial. It confuses your discomfort with divine absence. You are allowed to name that confusion without obeying it. And when you do, the room changes a little, because truth always creates space. The window, the rain, the waiting, and the breath all belong to the same story now. You are not simply enduring time. You are being formed inside it. There is a sentence your soul needs to learn. God is not late because he has not forgotten you. He is precise because he is loving. The precision can feel slow to a heart trained by urgency, but slow does not mean empty. Slow can be the shape of mercy when the thing being built is too important to be rushed. You are standing under a process that is older than your fear and kinder than your conclusions. There is a biblical echo here that belongs close to your ordinary life, not far away in a stained glass distance. When the psalmist spoke of waiting for the Lord, he did not speak from a polished room. He spoke from the pressure of real days, where the body had to keep breathing while the soul kept hoping. That same kind of waiting lives in your own kitchen, your own car, your own bed, your own silence. The holy text and the common room are not as far apart as they seem. You are living the modern version of an ancient act, holding your place before God without pretending the ache is not there. And because you are living it, you are also learning what some people never learn until much later, that delay is not always absence, and quiet is not always withdrawal. Sometimes the Lord is shaping endurance in the exact spot where you wanted instant relief. Sometimes he is teaching you not to confuse immediate comfort with lasting formation. The body resists this lesson because the body wants the quickest exit from strain. Your shoulders want to drop into certainty before certainty has arrived. Your throat wants to loosen before the answer has spoken. Yet your spirit is being invited into a steadier rhythm. The old pattern would have you interpret every pause as a problem. The new pattern asks you to let the pause do its work. That does not make pain imaginary. It makes pain meaningful. There is a difference between suffering that is wasted and suffering that is consecrated. You are being shown the second kind more than you realize. And when the soul begins to recognize that, it stops begging the clock to perform and starts trusting the one who holds the hour. That is not passive faith, that is mature faith. It sits upright, even with tired eyes. It listens, even when the answer has not yet crossed the threshold. Somewhere in the middle of all this, You may have noticed that your own inner voice has begun to sound more honest than before. It no longer pretends that everything is fine. It no longer rushes to explain away the ache. It simply says, "This matters, and I need God to meet me here." That sentence is a beginning. It is the kind of beginning that can happen while you are rinsing a plate at the sink or folding clothes that still smell faintly of soap. The small tasks continue, but they no longer distract you from the deeper fact that something within you is being clarified. You are not losing your faith because you are asking hard questions. You are losing false certainty, and that is different. There is a cost to that loss, because false certainty can be comfortable. It lets you pretend you already know what God should do. But true faith is less tidy and more real. It allows for mystery without surrendering hope. It allows for tears without surrendering obedience. It allows for the possibility that the answer you wanted is not the only mercy available. This is why you have felt both tension and tenderness in the same day. Your spirit is stretching, and stretching often feels like discomfort before it feels like capacity. The enemy uses that discomfort to accuse you. God uses it to enlarge you. One voice says, "You are too late." The other says, "You are being prepared." One voice narrows the future. The other opens it. You are learning how to tell the difference, not just in your head, but in your body, because peace has a particular sensation when it enters. It is not always loud. Sometimes it is a slight unclenching in the chest, a deeper breath, a moment when the hands stop tightening around what they cannot control. That small release is a sign. Do not ignore small signs just because they are small. God often starts with what seems almost too quiet to matter. If even one of those signs has landed in you, if your shoulders lowered for a moment, if your breathing changed, if the old panic lost its grip even briefly, write 888 in the comments. That is not a magic number, and it is not a code to control anything. It is simply a sign of overflow, a quiet confirmation that what was being spoken found a place inside you. Your fingers writing 888 are saying yes in the simplest language available. Sometimes the smallest agreement is the most honest one. Write 888, then come back to me. And as you come back, do not rush past the meaning of that tiny act, because little agreements are often where larger trust begins. The point is not the number itself. The point is the recognition that something in you has heard more than words. The point is that your heart is not as closed as fear wanted it to be. Keep listening, because the next movement is not far away. It is already shaping itself around the quiet yes you just gave. There is a strange relief that comes when you stop trying to make every detail behave before God has finished speaking. You feel it in the shoulders first, as if a strap has been loosened that you forgot was there. You feel it in the mouth, too, when you realize you have been clenching your jaw around outcomes you cannot manufacture. The relief does not solve everything, but it tells the body that it is no longer in a fight it was never meant to lead. This is where faith becomes practical, not theoretical. It enters the breathing. It enters the way you sit down. It enters the way you listen to a conversation without trying to force it toward your preferred ending. That is why this season may be teaching you stewardship more than speed. Stewardship means handling what is in front of you with reverence, even while waiting for what is beyond you. It means giving today what belongs to today and leaving tomorrow where it belongs. The old instinct wants to overreach. It wants to rehearse outcomes, to edit possibilities, to predict every turn. But overreach is exhausting, and exhaustion makes the soul thin. God is not thinning you. He is strengthening you by returning you to your portion. There is peace in that return, even if it first feels like limitation. A cup only overflows when it has been filled rightly. A life only bears weight when it has been set in order. You are being ordered without being erased. You are being prepared without being discarded. That is why this pause matters so much. It is not empty time. It is sacred arrangement, and sacred arrangement always looks ordinary at first. You may be hearing these words while standing at a sink, opening a drawer, or turning off the lamp in a room that has known too many anxious nights. The object in your hand is ordinary, but the state of your heart is not. That is how God often works. He meets you in the ordinary object and makes it a witness. He meets you in the lamp, the cup, the drawer, the pillow, and the car seat. And he teaches you that the place where you are standing is not forgotten ground. You have stood in other places before, and some of them carried disappointment so long that you began to expect it as normal. But normal is not the same as true. A season can become familiar without becoming faithful. A fear can become familiar without becoming factual. This is why discernment matters now. Discernment lets you identify which voice is old habit and which voice is present grace. The old voice says nothing will come of this. The present grace says remain and see. The old voice says you are too late to begin again. The present grace says there is still room. And room is a word you should not underestimate. Room means breath. Room means movement. Room means God has not crowded you out of your own story. When your chest feels tight, it can be the sign that you are still trying to live in a space too small for what God is making. The pressure is not forever. It is a reminder that expansion is happening. You do not have to force the expansion. You only have to stop resisting it. This is what mercy sometimes looks like. A little more room where there used to be only pressure. A little more quiet where there used to be only noise. A little more trust where there used to be only control. And with that room comes responsibility, because what opens must also be tended. What God enlarges must be carried with humility. Nothing about this is random. Everything is being arranged. When you think back over the last several days, you can probably identify moments that seemed small at the time, but kept returning to your mind. A sentence someone said, a delay that irritated you, a door that stayed shut longer than expected, a text that came later than you hoped, a prayer that came out tired instead of polished. These are not meaningless fragments. They are often the texture of a process you only understand after you have lived through it. The older part of you wants to dismiss them because they did not arrive with drama. But God does not need drama to be decisive. He can work through the ordinary delay of a message, the strange stillness of an evening, the brief hesitation before a decision. That is why the pattern matters more than the spectacle. The pattern is telling you that a deeper hand is at work. You are not trapped in randomness. You are in a season of disclosure. Some things are being revealed by the way they refuse to hurry. Some things are being returned by the way they would not stay buried. Some things are being corrected by the patience you have been forced to learn. This is not always comfortable, and it is not meant to be. Correction has a tenderness inside it when God is the one doing it. It does not crush, it re-aims. It turns your gaze from what is temporary to what can hold you. That shift costs pride. It also gives peace. And peace, once it starts, is hard for fear to counterfeit. Fear can mimic urgency. It cannot imitate settledness for long. Settle into that thought. Let it sink beneath the noise. You are being re-aimed, not erased. You are being taught how to expect the right thing from the right hand. And when expectation becomes purified, disappointment loses some of its power. There is a deeper current beginning to move now, like a river under ice that has finally found a crack. You may not see the whole flow yet, but you can feel that something under the surface is changing direction. That is why certain memories have become sharper, not because you are meant to live there, but because you are meant to see the contrast between then and now. Then you interpreted silence as lack. Now you are beginning to recognize silence as a space where listening matures. Then you thought open doors were the only evidence of favor. Now you are seeing that closed doors can protect what open hands would have handled too early. Then you measured your life by visible movement. Now you are learning the value of unseen preparation. This shift does not erase longing. It reorders it. Longing once pulled you toward quick relief. Now it is being invited to pull you toward steady trust. That is a different kind of desire, and it changes what your heart asks for. Instead of demanding immediate proof, you begin asking for faithful guidance. Instead of begging for a sign that removes all tension, you ask for a sign that leads to obedience. That kind of prayer matures the whole person. It changes your pace, your posture, and your expectations. It also exposes the false comforts that used to numb you. You cannot remain fully numbed and fully awake at the same time. And tonight, wakefulness is being returned to you, not the frantic kind, the honest kind, the kind that sees clearly enough to stop pretending, but hopes deeply enough to keep going. That wakefulness will matter in the next steps, because what God is building in you now will need your attention later. You are not being prepared for a vague feeling. You are being prepared for a real obedience, and obedience always begins in the present, not in the fantasy of a safer tomorrow. If the image I have just led you through has settled somewhere in you that you cannot fully explain, write the words "Euveho Iso" in the comments. Let the recognition rest where it landed. Typing those words is a small way of sealing what your spirit already noticed. Type "Euveho Iso," then come back to me. And as you return, understand that the act itself is less about display and more about witness. You are not announcing yourself to people. You are allowing the truth to be named in your own record. That matters because what is witnessed becomes harder to dismiss later. What is named with honesty gains shape. What is given shape can be carried with more peace. So take the moment, place the words there, and return without rushing. The next part of this journey is not asking for performance. It is asking for a deeper consent. And consent grows best in a heart that has already admitted, even quietly, that God has been speaking more directly than fear wanted. You have probably noticed that some of the heaviest battles happen when nothing outwardly dramatic is taking place. The room looks the same, the routine looks the same, and yet your inner life feels like it is crossing a border no one else can see. That is why external stillness can be misleading if you only read your life by appearances. A storm inside a quiet room is still a storm, and a work of grace inside a quiet room is still grace. Your task is to discern which one is moving through you. The signs are often subtle at first. A less defensive reaction, a moment of patience where irritation would have ruled, a brief willingness to pray instead of explain. These are not small things. They are openings. They show that the old reflex is not the only reflex left. You are being given a different response, and different responses eventually become different paths. The body participates in that change more than people admit. The hands unclench, the breath drops lower, the eyes stop searching every corner for threat. When that happens, the soul begins to believe that it is safe enough to listen, and listening is a form of courage. It refuses the urgency that says you must solve everything now. It stands still long enough to let God speak into the real problem, not the imagined one. There is real wisdom in that stillness. It keeps you from building a life around your panic. It keeps you from calling every emotion a prophecy. It keeps you from mistaking every closed chapter for the end of your story. You are not done just because you have been interrupted. You are not abandoned just because the pace feels unfamiliar. In fact, the interruption may be the very hand that protects your future from your haste. That is hard to accept when you are tired. It is easier to resist than to trust. But resistance only exhausts what trust would heal. Trust begins by staying present. And presence begins by noticing that God is not far from the exact room where your questions are breathing. There is a reason the phrase you have been hearing in your spirit refuses to leave the doorway of your thoughts. It keeps coming back because it is meant to become more than a passing impression. The mind wants the whole explanation at once, but the spirit often receives in layers. First comes recognition, then comes attention, then comes the deeper yes that cannot be forced. That is how many callings work, and it is how many corrections work too. They arrive first as weight, then as pattern, then as clarity. You are somewhere in that sequence, and it is not accidental that your life feels more examined than usual. Examined lives are not less loved lives. They are often the ones being entrusted with more precise mercy. Precision can feel severe when you are used to vague comfort, but vague comfort rarely transforms anyone. Precision does. It shows you what is real and what is only recurring. It separates the noise from the note. It lets you hear attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuzazuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.